there's lots of things happening here in Africa, and I published some global research, and that would say that Africa, quite surprisingly, is ahead of the USA. So Asia is number one in terms of payments innovation because, of course, they've got China and there's a huge effect there with people like Alipay. But Africa is doing incredibly well. And people often say, so how come Africa is doing better than the USA? That's a good question. And the reality is that the USA doesn't really need to innovate. They've got lots of old systems, but people are quite happy with it. People aren't happy with how things are in Africa. They need to change, they need to go for financial inclusion. And therefore necessity really is the mother of innovation in this case and not invention. Every regulator that I know, and I know quite a lot worldwide, says that their aim is to help payments innovation. And I think we take them at face value for that. I really think they do want to help. And it's a difficult job. We have to have a lot of sympathy these days for the regulator because payments is becoming a very technical business. However, here in Africa, the payments regulators are more negatively regarded than almost anywhere else in the world. And that's really because I think there's an experience issue that they haven't been dealing with these issues for a long time. They tend just to take the banking view because generally the people in the central bank come from banks. And they need to perhaps get more of a technical understanding. And so I think in a number of countries that I deal with, the regulator really perhaps needs to go back a stage and try to reset, because at the moment, even though they want the objective of financial inclusion and a more competitive marketplace, their policies actually do exactly the opposite. Today, of course, there's a lot of people here in Africa who don't have electronic payment instruments, and it's always a big challenge to get somebody from the cash world into the electronic world for the first time. Once they've made one electronic transaction and learned to use sort of instruments to start with, then they can easily migrate to other things. But getting them over the first hurdle is incredibly difficult. So if we look forward a few years, I think that meeting the needs of the unbanked is incredibly important here. And for sure, mobile network operators are going to play a major role in that. So the big question is, will that exclude the banks? And I think that there is so much untapped potential here that there's almost too much to do for everybody. So I don't see how the banks are not going to play an important role. I don't think they'll control 100% of the market. I think that's unrealistic. And they probably couldn't cope with it. But I think there's a lot of things that the banks are going to excel at that they really need to play a role. So no, I think it's a good future for banks. We've sort of moved away in the payments world from people wanting to do everything. A lot of organizations sort of believe that controlling everything from A to Z was the right way. And now we're much more into the sort of the ecosystem model where everybody plays a part, but you need other people. And in that ecosystem world, then you really do need partners, and you need best of breed partners who can do different things. You do what you're good at, and then they do what they're good at, and together it works. And maybe you have to share the money as well. Maybe you have to share the revenue. You certainly share the jobs, the costs. But together you can be stronger than any one person can be alone. When you look at what MCB can do, I think I see a few roles for MCB. Certainly everything I hear as I move around Africa is that the expertise of MCB is very well regarded, and the consulting arm, etc., it has a tremendous reputation, and that's a strength that can be leveraged for all your partner banks. But there's another thing, is that putting partnerships together is difficult. You may both want to go to the dance together, but how do you get introduced, and then how do you make a deal? So I think there's a great opportunity for MCB to spot where the partnerships should be put together, to introduce the partners, and then to actually make some agreements and get people doing business together. And that's where the knowledge and the experience of MCB can be really valuable.